Hey there, ho there, what you know there? This is your Sensie Owl Bob, this guy right here. I'm your griot here to tell you a story. It's summertime, and living can be easy. It can also be pretty tough. Um, is anyone paying attention? You know, they're sending more and more troops to D.C. I wonder why. So, how are those tariffs working out? Hey, you farmers, all you mega kids and cats, had those big American flags and mega flags out of your pickup trucks driving around. How you doing now? How's that farm doing? You used to have about 800 Hispanic guys working in your farm. I have none. They all ran away. I wonder why. You guys in the Tyson corporate headquarters, how you doing? Right? You had close to 750,000 Hispanics that you didn't really pay attention whether they were legal or not, right? They had a driver's license, that was all you needed, and you put them to work, paying them less than a white man would make. Doing, instead of 8 hours, they were doing 12-hour shifts, right? And getting paid for 6. Um, Now they're all gone. All those factories along the North Carolina-Tennessee border, they've all closed up. And you guys, how's those chicken wings, They've been in the freezer since 1965, and they irradiate. And I remember watching, I would wake up early. As soon as the light comes, the sun rises, I wake up. As soon as the sun goes down, I go to sleep. That's pretty much my MO with sleep, right? So I do that. And so as a kid, I would do that. And then I'd wake up like at 5:30 in the morning, and I would uh, go down and watch the TV. Right? And first thing was you'd get, if I got there, let's say at 4:30, there'd be the test pattern, right? And then around 5, there'd be the American flag and the whatever song that is that we march to about America. Oh, beautiful voice, whatever that is. And so, and then at 5:30, there our programming today starts with, and they'd have like something from, the uh, Defense Department, telling us what great things the Defense Department's doing. And that was kind of fun. I kind of like that. And then there was, something else, some other kind of political propaganda. And then around, 6:45, cartoons started, right? And first old ones, black and white, and then there was, the 1930s, 40s. Remember that? Hey, 17 of you there. How about some thumbs up? Hit that suggestion box. Let's have some conversations. And it's the same guys here. I say, oh, there's something in Arabic. I'm sure it said hi. It's the same Mojo dude, uh, Majid Talk. Majid Talk. And it was probably an AI. AI, you're supposed to be a lot smarter than this. Let's have a cogent thought, right? And the rest of it now, there's only went from 17 to 8. And so anyway, um, have you noticed your experience in the houses of worship of mass consumption? Walmart's, Target, the big supermarket chains. Have you noticed the prices? So, certain things, they just stay the same. It's pretty interesting. Like Walmart's good deal English muffins are always $1.54. It's pretty interesting. Tell me, anybody up there in Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, those places over in the West where you get most of your gas for your car and your house and your business and electricity. All of those things came from Canada with no tariffs whatsoever and very, good set price. All the businesses knew what it was and they could plan for the next economic season. No, not so much. It's pretty interesting that, um, the guy who no one thought would win, he became the premier, the president or whatever they call him up in Canada. And he had been a banker, lawyer, and a basically diplomat in the finance world. He ran part of the World Bank, the IMF, you name it, he was it. And he came in there, and Canada was all ready for this. Soon as Donnie's, you're going to be the 51st state, because they were already the 51st state. But what people didn't realize is that they weren't the 51st state. The United States was. We had, in 1947, there was a thing called the National Security Act, which pretty much changed the world, right? America, end of World War II, 45, they were the top dog. They had totally super industrialized, that kind of slingshotted them out of the Depression. They fought a war, but they didn't get bombed. Everybody else got bombed, and the Japs got nuked, right? And, the whole thing about us being invaded, right? We had the Spanish-American War at the turn of the century, just before Woodrow Wilson. And the Spanish, they had wooden boats. We had big metal boats with big artillery that you could hit a boat relatively accurately from like 20 miles away. The Spanish didn't have, and they said, listen, we don't want to have a war with you, please, please. And then the Maine blew up in the Havana port, and we were up to the races, and we got the whole Pacific, and a good chunk of Central America, and the Philippines, all those little islands between the Philippines and Japan, we got, and we took them over, right? And we killed 1 million. So we kicked the Spanish out of the Philippines. The Philippines thought we were coming in to be their liberators. No, we wanted to make them our slaves. And, they wanted, America wanted to do the same thing that Christopher Columbus did to Haiti. And so they rebelled, right? And they had a war with us. And we killed over 1 million Filipinos until we kind of wrestled them. And then we gave them, spam, just like Hawaii, right? And so we almost made, in the 50s, we almost made the Philippines another state. It was like a toss-up between the Philippines and Hawaii. And Hawaii was more a naval base, right? But we turned the Philippines into a gigantic aircraft area and put all our bombers there. So anyway, we did that. And the Japanese invaded all of those little islands and the Philippines before they went after Hawaii. I mean, like months. So they already attacked us. It's not like we didn't know. And we broke their code, the purple code. So we knew exactly what their whole thing was. And, FDR said, the Americans aren't going to care that, the Japs took the Philippines, even though it's like our 52nd state, So we didn't advertise it. We didn't put it in the newspapers. We didn't tell anybody really that, the Japanese were at war with us, which they were. And so when they invaded Hawaii, now that was a different story. It was, half, the distance between LA and the Philippines was like 6,000 miles, and the distance from LA to Hawaii was like, 1,800 miles. And we had a big naval base, and we had like 10, 15,000 Americans or more, maybe 40,000 Americans in Hawaii, or maybe even, because it was really nice, really pretty, really beautiful. It was heaven. Of course, we've destroyed it. And when we had the big fire in Helena, or whatever the name of the last refuge of Hawaiian culture that got incinerated in a day, and then turned into a theme park within weeks, and, people like uh, you know, movie stars bought it up, and big influencers, bought it up. Um, let's see. Oh, there's Jamie. Hey there, Jamie. So we're talking about the dynamic of our spiritual self and our material self, and that this period right now, the next 6 months to 6 years, we're going to see a real interesting, everyone's talking about end of times and Jesus is going to come back with a big sword and kill everyone who's not nice like he is. No, that's not going to happen. Show us your sloppy floppers. What are you talking about? Anyway, okay, here's my, how about this? Here's my sloppy flopper. Does that work? Yeah. But you want to look at, my chest. Is that the flapper you're talking about? Right. Well, that is basically skin left over from the 260 pounds that I lost. When you get back, when I was 450 plus pounds, that's why I'm in the physical shape I'm in. But I was given the opportunity to experience the life of the desperate moron corporate lawyer and, live like I had a 12-figure salary, which I didn't, right? I had basically a 5-figure salary. But I only worked 11 weeks of the year and still could live like I was on a 12-figure salary because I was hanging out with these guys. They would paint themselves into a corner, and I would observe what the situation was, and I would develop a synchronistic strategy and get them out of their problem, right? And they gave me, but that's why I only had to work. But they loved my ass so much because I was amusing, right? And I was their little cheeky monkey. And so I was part of their, what do you call that? When you have a crew of people and you go to fancy restaurants and bars and casinos, you're not your cadre, because your cadre has to be spiritually linked, not just, hedonistically linked, right? So I love a good meal. I love living like a millionaire. So I do, I live like a millionaire on like $400 a month, right? Because it's a state of mind. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and we were telling stories, and she and I, it was where we were in the trenches in the Lower East Side in the early 80s, right? And we, did the homesteading thing, and we did the art thing, the theater thing, you name it thing. And that's why. So she's still there because she got herself a nice little, like I did, I was living in Westbeth, which was this collective that the state gave to a group of artists, about maybe 200 people. There's 200 people. There's probably 80 apartments. It was an old phone building on Canal and Varick, and really nice, kind of right down the street from the Holland Tunnel, or the whatever tunnel it was that went to New Jersey. I think it's Holland Tunnel. And so it was a constant of the traffic because everybody came off the Manhattan Bridge from the BQE on Canal Street and then went in that tunnel, or went up First Avenue or Second Avenue, or down Broadway into downtown, Lower, like the Battery, right? So anyway, so she and I had gone through that, and we traveled a lot, and we were rainbows, but we weren't the rainbows that drank the Kool-Aid. We went to those gatherings because it represented a potential of having a spiritual life in the material world. And not so much anymore. But it did give birth to rainbow gatherings all over the world, right? There's European ones, Asian ones, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been very blessed. If I have any really great skill or gift or whatever, talent, to be in the right place at the right time and to know it and jump into it instead of, oh, should I do that? Should I do, ooh. And most people, the bus goes by. Me, I jump on, right? And whatever happened, right? And it's still that way today, you know, with the event in September. I didn't go, we jumped on, right? And me and a few people were the first to jump on, and then everyone was so desperate to, you know, save their lives and their loved ones, they jumped in too. So we worked as a community to save our community. We didn't expect this, you know, the county was useless, the state was useless, FEMA was useless. It was all, they didn't do anything. The roads, the main road through our part of the county or the state, was destroyed, you know, like was just covered with hundreds of trees, and we cut them out. The county didn't, we did, because we needed to have the ability to have our supply chain get in. So we took that out. We took down even power lines. Our utility was so brilliant, they sent 60% of their line crews to Florida because they thought, you know, they had this mutual thing and Florida was going to get whacked. They didn't think it would even touch us. And because the rich people bought up everything between 2020 and 23, they owned all the property, and they're building $1 million houses here. They're turning this place into, you know, basically Asheville / Boone / Blowing Rock / all the places have cute little places. Like Asheville had, when I lived in Asheville for 9 years, from 91 to 99, Asheville had a population, the county, Buncombe County, had a population of about 60,000. Now it's almost 500,000. Asheville City has close to 200,000 people in it. And it was, you know, it was designed to have no more than like, you know, 30,000. So it's like an ant farm. So anyway, that is the dynamic here, right? So the hurricane and just obliterated. And people go, oh, Asheville got so. No. French Broad flooded out the art district, and which is not even, it's more, it should be called the tourist district. And it was still funky old buildings, and they wanted that gone so they could, because the rest of Asheville, downtown Asheville, has skyscrapers. I mean, there used to just be the BB&T building that was 20 stories tall, and a couple like 1920s buildings that were like 15, 16 stories tall, like a Flatiron building. And that was Asheville. It was kind of a southern copy of Lower Manhattan, you know, of the rich people. Asheville is a mecca for Mayor Baba lovers for some reason. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because there are all of these bourgeois folk who are searching for an external version of a spiritual experience. Now, they think that that's Mayor Baba, but no. Mayor Baba is what I love Mayor Baba is that it's a vehicle to have that creative, unconditional love. That's what Mayor Baba is. It's not you burn incense and meditate and have singing bowls. So that Asheville, starting the mid-90s, had all these wing jobs from all over the place called the New Age, right? And they had all kinds of people. And me, I was just having a good old time doing art and, you know, studying. I was sent there to do an ethnography on the Biltmore House. I did that. And our crew did such a great job that the state hired us to do an ethnography on the Asheville City County Plaza, right, which is like the seat of government there. And the Biltmores built that in the 20s because they were expecting it to be a pretty city. And so they were building infrastructure for that. And then the Depression came. And that building just became a depository of all of what happened. So down in the basement, there were boxes and boxes and boxes of photos and documents and all kinds. There was a whole room of keys, to every building around. And so we were charged with putting that in order and making a database out of it, because the real deal of what we were sent there to do is to do the demo work of all the crap and save what was relevant of the Gilded Age, to then promote it as a tourist attraction. And that's what Asheville is now. So I was doing that. And the next thing we did was we did such a good job on those two things. The Cherokee Nation that was hanging out there in Cherokee, North Carolina, kind of where Waynesville is. And so they came, this one guy, what's Tommy's something feather? Anyway, two feather something. And he came to us, and he was there. His grandfather was a medicine man. His other grandfather was a chief, and his mother was like big in the chiefdom scene. And he went to school at Chapel Hill. He became an anthropologist, and he was trying to, because they weren't on the roll. Andrew Jackson so destroyed their everything that they didn't even get on the roll, so they couldn't get anything from the federal government. So he came to, I said, you guys are really good at digging through the garbage of the situation to pick out the gems to define what the scene was. So we did that. We went up to Cherokee, and we spent a year there, and it was so nice because people loved us. We were part of the tribe. That's why I have a T-shirt from that time that says, I'm part of the tribe. And because there are all these white people that go to powwows, and they say, what tribe are you from? And they go, the wannabes, right? So anyway, so that's the people who are in Asheville doing the Mayor Baba thing, because they are wannabes. So you could do anything you wanted in Asheville. There was nobody there. The cops. So we knew the city, government, everybody, and all the rich people, and everybody, because we were just clearing out their basements and going through their documents and, putting it into a place that they could use it to say, see, I was blah, blah, blah. So anyway, we were the dudes and dudettes of that. And I was taking pictures of everything and everybody and giving people copies of it, right? So they were all just so pleased as punch. And so I had many girlfriends because I was there 9 years. And I had this, after my fifth wife, I said, okay, enough of this wife thing. I'm going to have affairs to remember. And that I would be the most amazing. I endured that motif, and that happened. And they weren't they weren't like the most gorgeous or the most this or the most that. They were just the most amazing. And the fact that I just sat there and, I said, but I want to hear your story. Tell me the story. And they would. And I wouldn't say anything. I would just listen. And then I'd say, I hear you saying, and I would repeat it back to them. And they would like, you listen to me. And that was it. I was her boyfriend. And then I would be 100%. Because I'm a one-girl guy. I don't play the field. I mean, even when I was Mr. Disco, about 6 months I did that. And I had like 3 different girls one night. And I said, this is worthless. And then AIDS showed up, and I said, oh, I'm not going to do that no more. And that's why I married my training wife, Donna Ann. And then, Stephanie, the Swiss banker's daughter, who was brilliant. I mean, everything she did was like, she went to Juilliard, that's where I met her, and she was a celloist, and she played in Lincoln Center, and she was so gorgeous. She was walking around one day, and this guy said, hey, I'm from Ford Model Agency, and I'd love it if you could come down to our office and let us take a few pictures of it. And so she did. And so, she's just knock over brilliant and knock over beautiful. And so they took these really nice pictures of her, and she was, oh, you're model material. And then the guy goes, you wouldn't mind taking your dress off, would you? Let's take some pictures of you in your underpants and your brassiere. Yeah, no problem. She did that, and they were like, whoa, right? So she became, Victoria's Secret's #1 model, right? Then Sports Illustrated, she was the cover swimsuit girl 5 years in a row. And that's about when I met her. So she was like big time musician, big time model, and her daddy was super rich Swiss banker, right? And we had 3 great years. I went away in the early 70s after I did some amazing things for Soho. And I came back after, going to New Mexico for 2.5 years, and then going to DC for about 6 months, and then going to England for a little bit and coming back. And that period I was in Ireland too. So anyway, I came back around 74. And I started all these art things in New York and Soho, and I had a great loft in Soho. Anyway, so did all that kind of stuff. I had my good political friend Carrie Shea, who was a real fixer, and so I met Donna Ann in '76. We had a great period of time, and we were in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and we spent 3 years in Australia, and we traveled Europe, and then after that, in the early '80s, kind of did that, and then Jane Fire, and then she was a great drummer, right? Again, she came from a rich daddy. She was a nice Jewish girl, and I, living in Brooklyn, had all these Hasidic and Lubavitcher friends, and she was Orthodox Jew, but she was, wow. She was a punk. She had a punk band, the Jane Fire band, and she was a drummer, right? And she was a great drummer. She was on fire when she played the drums, and she was always on fire. And so she was a CBGB regular in the beginning days, and that's how I met her, because I helped put that together. My friend Lawrence, who worked for A&R, he was one of the godfathers of punk, right? Anyway, and Stephanie, I met her, I guess 84 or 85. And it was just, I kind of knew her when I was at, Juilliard. But she, I was in theater, and she was, in the concert thing. But my friend, who became the main driver of the kitchen, I can't believe I forgot her name. So that was my first, affair to remember, because we were buds at Juilliard. And we were both pranksters. We loved to they had a thing with, it's a company, what's it called? It's a big, Brooks Van Horn, big costume company. And the thing about Juilliard, whatever your discipline was, you would take these courses, but it wasn't like going to college, theater school. No, it was Juilliard. And so whatever you were doing, within the second semester you were there, once you kind of got in and got your feet wet, and you were taking courses in whatever you were going to do, they would stick you into, Lincoln Center in the orchestra. They had lots of different orchestras, or over at Carnegie Hall, where they had all these practice rooms where other musicians who were trying to put stuff together always needed musicians, right? And they also had acting, guys who were writing plays or producing plays, and before it gets on off Broadway, it goes to Carnegie Hall, and they practice anyway. So I actually lived there because I was basically a scenic lighting designer, and the first thing, so I got into it, and I had already kind of been doing it, like in rock and roll at the Phil Maurice, so I kind of knew what a what all the instruments were called. That's a Lico, that's a Purnell, that's a scoop. This is how it works. This is what you do with it. And I already knew that. I didn't have to, and I'd already been wiring theaters. And so the people there just said, oh, yes, this boy. Plus, I had my uh, Toulon, Marion Toulon. She was on the board of Lincoln Center and Juilliard. That's how I got in there, right? I didn't have to really. She just said, okay, he's here. And then she stuck me with Lester Polikoff, who is the godfather of design. He worked for Joe Melziner. He was Joe Melziner's best boy. Joe Melziner invented modern theater and movie. There's a cinematographer, the director and the cinematographer. That was Joe Melziner in Hollywood. He was that guy because he could light anything and get, he was like one of the guys who invented the noir kind of film aesthetic. Anyway, so I just kind of cruised into all these people. I didn't have to like anything other than, oh, you can do that. And that was Lester, Marion brought me to meet Lester at Lincoln Center, and Lester had a beautiful office there. And his last best boy was Michael Moody, who was big time cinematographer / he ran Manhattan Theater Club out of Carnegie Hall. And so Marion, you need a new best boy. He's it. And so Lester said, okay, here's a design. The crew is on stage 3 at Lincoln Center. Go over and run it. And I didn't go, what, me? I said, sure, no problem. So I went over there and I said, okay, who's in Maybeth? And they all kind of put their hand up. Who knows Grandpa Stoll? I heard of him. I never met him. I said, yeah, that was the guy who taught me how to do this. And they were, and they were all in their like 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. I was like 18 or 19, right? And I said, listen, you guys wouldn't be here if you weren't the best. So I'm not going to tell you what to do. I am just going to be here to cheerlead you and give you an idea that I might have that you might think is good, or tell me why it's not. Again, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but let's do it as a team, because that's my skill. I'm a team guy, that's why that T-shirt says I'm part of the tribe, right? So anyway, what is Jamie saying here? My mother always said, marry through ugly with small hands. They'll always be grateful and make you feel big. Well, that's, yeah. But that's like, I think, a metaphor, right? So anyway, so that's where I met Stephanie. And she was tall, like taller than me. And when she had high heels, she was really taller than me. And she was just a goddess. And I met her. So I went and did that, built that stage and did that thing on with the boys and girls. And basically, the best boy gets all the different trades to work together to play nice, right? And that's what I'm really good at. So not only did I that, I kind of got everything, the costumes, the props, the lighting, the staging, did it in 2 days. Got it all together, got it moving, started, that which is always the hardest thing, getting started, and moving on, right? And I said, okay, guys, you got it. I'll be back. And I went back to Lester and I took pictures of everything I did and developed them. And this is before digital cameras. I had to go down to the pharmacy and 1 hour Photoshop and, showed him the pictures and his drawings. I had notes all over them. And I found the prop mistress. She had the best handwriting ever. And she could see stuff. That's why she's a prop mistress, because of these little details. She could see every detail and how the little details fit in. And she had these amazing notes on his drawings. And he was like, and you did this in 2 days? I said, yep. He goes, you're my best boy. So I was. And then he turned me on to Michael Moody at Carnegie Hall. And that place is a big, beautiful, unbelievable building. They got apartments. I mean, it's more, if you ever go to the Carnegie Hall and walk through the front door, through the lobby, that's only, and where the people sit on the stage, that's 1/10 of what Carnegie Hall is. Right? So, I mean, basically, Michael Moody, he said, listen, this place is about to burn down. It was wired last time it was wired was 1928. They don't have the money. What I need you to do is, and, I talked to Lester, and he sent me to, and then he told me to go talk to Joe Papp, because I worked for George and George when we built Joe Papp Theater, and I was a ME at like 17. And then I went and talked to my boss, Bob Goddard, who owned Joshua Lights and Pig Lights, and that was the lights for every rock and roll, everything, right? And so, and he says that you're really good at getting the buzz out of the system. And I said, okay, not a problem. So I kind of went around and I was making notes about this, that, and the other thing. So you don't want the place to burn down. So the house lighting is fine. Don't have to screw with that. Anything that's in public space, it's all in pipe. Someone in the 60s pulled new wire through all of that and put a couple panels. So the house is fine, right? All the stuff that's behind the stage, meaning all these practice rooms and all this, that too is all done in pipe. But the stage and all of that, it's like tube and peg. It's like, you got to be kidding me. The place where you really have to worry, I said, that's what I'm worrying about. It's going to burn up. I said, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go, to Bob Goddard's warehouse, and I'm going to get all the stuff that doesn't get used that is normally brought on, because when you're doing a big show, like you're going to do something, let's say Madison Square Garden, well, they have the peripherals, but they don't have, you have to put in your own grid. You have to put almost your own stage. And actually, you do have to put your own stage at Madison Square Garden. Anyway, so that's what we're going to do here in Carnegie. I'm just going to go get all that stuff and just, and I'm going to bring new service into the back of stage, and I'm going to put, other panels all over the place, because everything's going to be on surface. I don't have to screw with anything. And then I'm going to hang all of the SO all over the place and have it run by a really nice board. This is when SCRs were coming in. And so he's gone. And then I'm just going to clip all the wires for all this crazy shit and never have it energized ever frigging again. And so in less than 2 weeks, you can have like a brand new electrical system. And he was going, I said, yes. Why didn't you think of that, Mike? You're supposed to be an ME. He goes, yeah, but I'm not an electrician. MEs run the crews, and they're not electricians. I was an electrician. Anyway, so I did that, and that was it. Man, I was Michael Moody's best friend. Like in 1976, when the big ships were in New York, we lit all of the bridges, the Empire State Building, and the World Trade Center. That was way fun. That was a great gig, because I had like the keys to the king. I had this ID thing that had all, my picture and all kinds of, he can go here, he can go there. And when the big show was on, I was on board one of the first super duper destroyer missile things. What's now I don't know what to call it anymore, but it's like a floating computer. And this thing had, in the belly of the beast, had screens everywhere. And I was sitting in the chair that the guy said, you can sit in the chair, and this little joystick, you can do that, and you can push, there's like this thing of buttons, and you push one and you will get camera one. There's 400 cameras. You just keep going 100, 10, 20, and the big screen will show it, right? So, and you can zoom in, and it was amazing. You could really zoom in. So when that whole day, I was in the belly of that, because the Russians had boats there, and everybody had boats there that, if they wanted to. The Russians had like 4 pretty nasty missile destroyers in the middle of the harbor, And that's why the U.S. Navy was there in such a big way. Anyway, so I was there because we wired everything, so they wanted me to look at all the stuff we did and make sure there wasn't something hinky, that somebody didn't stick something where it shouldn't be stuck. So anyway, I was doing that. It was so much fun. And that's when I really, really, really realized, because I'm like still a teenager, but I knew all the shit that there was out there, but I didn't realize how would you say it, developed the technology was. But I could just, these cameras, I could push the number, bang, there's Fifth Avenue, and I could zoom in all, the camera was like where they had a number of cameras on Broadway and had one at Union Square, a couple at Union Square, that you could get the shot all the way from, Union Square all the way up Broadway to where, not Broadway, Broadway and 7th Avenue up to, Columbus Circle, right? And you could zoom in on individual people. It was quite frigging amazing. And they had a version of facial recognition. This is 1976. Anyway, so I'm doing this, and it was great. They kept bringing in yummy food and drinks, and it was everyone was kind of, even though they were on the job, it was kind of 4th of July, 200th birthday, whoop-de-doo. Anyway, so I'm looking at it, and I'm looking up Broadway from Canal Street all the way up Broadway, as far as you like to Macy's. It's like all the way up to Broadway, and I am or Times Square, because that's where Broadway and 8th Avenue kind of cross. Anyway, so I'm looking all the way up, and every corner there is a beer truck, right, giving out free beer, right? And there was like, 2 million people who were drunk out of their minds. And I said to myself, and then I had a conversation with some of the more higher ups, because there were captains and majors and admirals in that room, the belly of the beast, the control center. But I was sitting in the joystick chair, and I was told not to touch any other buttons, just the joystick and the 10 little phone numbers there. Anyway, so I'm doing that, and I'm saying, guys, in the future, 1,000 years from now, when this empire is in the dust, they will say, so when did the fall of America start or happen? And I said, it's this day. Look at these chuckleheads. This is America. And everyone's looking at it. And these guys have been serving their country for their whole life, and they're a little, 2 drinks in the bag. So anyway, that's my life. I just seem to, step in it, right? So Stephanie, I met her at Juilliard, and she would practice and practice and practice her cello, and she practiced it. So I was in the more like the opera stage and the what's it, Vivian Beaumont Theater. It's probably named after some other corporation by now, but anyway, that was like the performance. I mean, they performed everything, but that was like where theater was, right? So, and that's my person who Tulin, Marion Tulin, she ran that place. She was the artistic director of that. Anyway, so I had all these amazing grown-ups around me treating me like a equal, because I was responsible, I was focused, I wasn't full of myself, because there were a lot of other talented people my age who were just so full of themselves. I mean, I was there to learn, and I didn't try to. Michael Moody, yeah, so I'm like 19, he's like 30-something. He was another guy who was, that's why he got to where he was. And I said, when I did the thing with Carnegie Hall, and we did it for, I don't know, under 5. I mean, the board was going to give him almost $300,000 to rewire, Carnegie Hall. And because every electrical company who came in there, yeah, that's what it's going to cost. And the fact that we did it for like under $12,000, and the inspectors came in and said, no, this is all to code. This is all great, right? And stamped it and gave it to, so the insurance guys would be happy, et cetera, et cetera. And Michael got all that money put into his artistic budget. So that's why I was like, whoa. And that's why he gave me, there was an apartment there. He gave me this apartment. It was on the back wall of the main theater. And the other side of the back wall kind of faced northwest, right? And that building was, because they had a grid up there. So you could fly scenery that was, 150 feet long. You could fly it away from the Termer, so when you looked at the whole, the fourth wall of the theater where the audience is on the other side, you wouldn't see that shit. That's how high. It was like 300 feet high, like 20, maybe 20 stories high. And on that whole back wall was all like another building where all of these practice rooms and apartments. And I got an apartment that was right at the top, had the best view, but it was still right at the top. And I was like right next to where the grid was. So whatever smell or anything kind of gets sucked straight up the grid into the top. And they had this like vent up there, but my apartment was up there. So whatever was being cooked or broken or burnt on what street that was on. I think it's in the 50s, but anyway. So I had that thing at 19, and that was a great space. I mean, to take, girls up, and I had my own, there was a little elevator that went up to the grid. And there was another one that went up halfway, but once you got past the practice rooms, the next 5 floors were walk-ups. But that top one was right next to the grid, and there was an elevator that went straight up there, because if you were setting lights, bars could be lowered, but the grid, to set all of the winches, you had to walk around on the grid up there and set the winches to be able to pull, because nothing, you can adjust everything in the theater. Anyway, so if you're doing that, and you have to go from the stage floor to the grid like 20 times in an hour, if you had to go up the stairs, you'd kill you. So they had this nice little elevator right up there, and they had a door that went from the stage door, and then it went down another flight to where the loading bay was, which is kind of where the street was. And I'm the only guy who had the key for that, and the elevator would come down, and it was kind of fun. I could walk through Carnegie Hall from, the lobby to the stage, through the gangland. That's like where the, the guys, the pit is. And the gangland is this thing that goes like kind of from the back, so you don't have to walk through the audience to get to the pit or the back of the stage, right? So anyway, and had the key to get into the lobby, and you'd come to the secret door, you open that up, and you'd walk through this thing that you could see the whole, if there was something going on, like a performance, you could go on a gangland and you could see everybody. They couldn't see you. You could see them. And you'd walk by the stage, you get off and get on stage if you wanted to, or you go in the back, And so I had keys to everything. And I was 19, right? And like I said, all the people, so my nickname to all of these grown-ups was the kid, right? And in the disco world, my handle was the dude, right? Before that movie, right? The Great Lebowski. Before that, my nickname was the dude. Anyway, I always had a really great girlfriend, and in that period, I had a lot of Jewish girlfriends, because I had, connections to the Hasidim and the Lubavitcher guys. That's, that before Williamsburg became Williamsburg and the hipster land it is now, it was his manufacturing zone, and Grandpa Stoll were fixing lots of factories in that. And the other place that was great was where the Manhattan Bridge comes over and hits the BQE, and both the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge and the Williamsburg Bridge, those are all the three first bridges downtown, um, have walkways because the workers either lived in lower Manhattan and went over to Brooklyn or lived in Brooklyn and came over to Manhattan and they would walk over it, right? And the Manhattan Bridge has subway trains, and so does the Williamsburg. Brooklyn Bridge doesn't because it's the first, so they didn't have subways then. Anyway, so the other place I lived in Brooklyn that was really great was, I always forget the name of it, but it's right at the end of the Manhattan Bridge. There are all these red brick buildings that are concrete buildings that were kind of built in World War I and World War II to manufacture stuff to be sent over in the war. So it didn't come from Illinois. Maybe parts came from Illinois, but it was all kind of put together there, put in a box, and sent on a boat to go, right? And right now it's owned by the guys who do the clock tower. Who's the guy with the golden underpants religion? Not Masons, but they're almost Masons, the other guys. So they're out there in Wyoming somewhere. Anyway, they own all of that, right? And what's his name? Brooke Alexander. He got one of those buildings and he put his artists up in it. And so he was a buddy of mine, and he had big, next to the guy who had 420. His name will pop into my mind. Anyway, that's how I got this beautiful loft that had just windows all the way around and looked at the lower Manhattan. From the Battery up to the 59th Street Bridge was my view. I have some pictures of it, but not with me. I have some other pictures of other times in New York that are right here. So anyway, okay. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Here we are. It is, let's see what Jamie's the only one saying anything. So let's see. Let's go, Tori start. Asheville is Mayor Baba. Yep, and I told you that story. Oh, that Mayor Baba story. Yes, I forgot to tell you this one. So there are all these people, and it was like a, spiritual materialism, which is called the New Age, right? Same as the old age. And so I was doing all this stuff in Asheville, and I had this friend of mine said, "Oh, you need to meet this woman. She needs you." And I said, "What?" Well, she's a shrink, and she's agoraphobic, so she can't leave the house, right? So he says, "She should be your girlfriend." And I was like, "What?" So I'm a little bit more gregarious and out there, and I'm always with the people. That's why she needs you, right? And I go, and so anyway, he goes over there because he's her friend and he's gay, and he brings her food. She doesn't even go out to go shopping, right? So he goes, "You're a really good cook, so I want you to, go shopping for food for me and get stuff that you want to cook for her." And I go, "Okay, this seems interesting." And he goes, "She's really a gorgeous Jewish woman." And really gorgeous Jewish women really are gorgeous. They have this Middle Eastern thing going on that's, anyway. And they often, so in New York, I had a lot of Jewish girlfriends, right? And so, especially before I started getting married, before Donna Ann, I had mostly Jewish girlfriends because they were so restricted, so controlled, so, especially in those Orthodox communities, they would break out, and their daddies loved them, so they give them whatever money they needed and give them an apartment. And, and New York, the beauty of New York is that it's so big. It's got 18 million people live in it. And if you fuck up in this neighborhood, you just have to go, 5 blocks over there. No one knows you. Start over again. It was great, especially as a young adolescent young lad who kind of was, in the working world at 9 and doing stuff, it was really great. I never really fucked up in any of those neighborhoods. I never did. But I did move around because it was so. You went 5 blocks over there, it's different people. Anyway, so I had a bunch, like Jane Fire, Jewish girl. Beth. I shouldn't really name names, so I won't. I'll just use first names. Anyway, so I had a number of them, and they love me. So anyway, Asheville, I go to the shrinky lady, and she is really super educated, right? So we're talking, he brings me in, we bring in boxes of food, and he goes, this is the guy I'm telling you about. He's going to cook you dinner tonight. And he's really well read. And so was she. She was like really a philosopher. She was really, right? So I came in, and I just started making stuff. I said, so what do you like? Tell me what you like, And she goes, well, I like fish. And so, well, got a nice big fresh salmon here. We're going to make salmon. And I made salmon, and I made a nice eggplant. And I found a jar of, what's the fruit? That if it's not really, it's a Middle Eastern fruit. It's not dates. It's not prunes, it's something else. I'll pop it in my mind. But anyway, if the fruit really isn't taken care of, it's like cat piss. But the leaves are amazing. So that was one of my little tricks. I found this jar of these leaves, as like, cut up as a powder, like oregano almost. And it's got this smoky, almost chocolatey, vibrant, peppery taste, and everything is so down low. And you mix that with, like, I got canned, bottled, or steamed, or whatever, artichoke hearts and asparagus, right? And I cooked them up, and then add one of the secrets to real interesting cooking is condensed milk. So you want a cream sauce, condensed milk. It never curdles, never turns into glop. And it's got this sweet, amazing, fresh taste, right? And in coffee, that's what Thai coffee is. Really strong coffee with condensed milk in it. Anyway, so I make this sauce. I just lightly, cook the, and I brought like a like $12 hibachi that I saw in the supermarket, and I bought a thing of like wood charcoal, not like briquettes, because that's a chemical. It's like mostly gasoline. But these wood ones, like I forgot what kind of wood they were, but cedar maybe, and they were briquettes, right? So they were charcoal, and so I do that. I got the fire going. I put it on. 2 minutes on one side, 2 minutes on the other side. The sauce is making, and I made these really great little teeny potatoes, right? And I like just threw them in a pot and boiled them up for about 40 minutes. I did that first. And the first thing I did was I had celery, and I took all the stringy part off the celery, so it was just watery, It's like eating fresh, yummy, ice cold celery, and I had cream cheese on it with paprika, right? So my mom's one thing that she really likes, right? And I also had the other thing my mom made was like English muffin pizzas, right? So I made those like that, like after my friend left, and I opened up a bottle of wine. And she was sitting in the kitchen with me, and I just zing, 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 the celery, put cream cheese on it, hit it with paprika, and it went really well with that nice cold Zinfandel. And then I made, 5 minutes, these little pizzas, right? And then I started on a rack of lamb and fresh vegetables and that. And then I said, what do you really want to eat? And because I just kept knocking this stuff out. And she I said, what do you really, really like? She said, fish. I said, oh, we have salmon. So I did that like within 20 minutes. I had that in front of her. And so, like, the first hour, she had the celery, the little pizzas, the salmon. And then the other stuff was going to take at least, um, you know, 2 hours, right? Because I cook meat really slow, right? Actually, I cook it one day and then I cook it again and then I cook it again and then I serve it, right? But anyway, I wasn't going to do that. I'm just going to cook that slow. And the other thing I had bought was this, supermarket, whatever kind of pies, Marie, Salad, whatever the really good ones are that restaurants use, right? And so I had two of those pies, but they had this fudge brownie. And I basically, when I had supermarket, I kind of opened up the box and just stuck my fingers in there. And went, yeah, that's good stuff. And then I did the same thing. I looked around for ice cream, found what seemed to be the best vanilla ice cream there was. And I basically, put my fingers in it and said, yep, that's good. And closed it up. And I didn't buy another one. I bought the one I stuck my fingers in. And I also got, I don't know if you're going to a pizza parlor and they have those flake peppers that you jingle on your pizza. And I bought some of those. And so we had the celery, we had the little pizzas, we had the salmon, we were drinking the Zinfandel. I had a bottle of champagne and I had that in the cooler. And she liked marijuana, so she had that. And so we're sitting out. She has this nice little kind of, she lives in an apartment, had a little porch that you could sit, and she was like kind of on the second or third floor, and it looked out kind of towards Merriman and downtown, right? So you could, and it was up on a hill that was like starting to go up to where if you went on that road all the way up, you'd hit this other road that would take you to the Blue Ridge Parkway. So it was almost kind of in, but not really. It was really downtown. So it was a block or so from Charlotte Avenue, right? It was above Charlotte Avenue. And anyway, so, and it was almost in the neighborhood where the big fancy hotel was. Like I said, if you kept on that road, it would hit another road that would take you up to the Parkway. So anyway, it was a very nice 1920-ish kind of apartment building. It had stores that weren't really being used down below. And so we're sitting on there, and we already got a pretty straight going buzz. And now we're eating. I said, okay, I made her a nice bowl of this fudgy brownie stuff with this really good vanilla ice cream on top, and then flaked, those peppers on top of that. And she's, this is amazing. And I just keep doing this. And she goes, you are just, and I start telling her stories, and she's telling me her life. And she basically had the same kind of Hasidic life that I knew of, that I lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, but in California, right? And so she was a California girl. And that's why she became a shrink. And she, was, had the credentials, that's for sure. She had them all over the wall, but she couldn't go out of the house, and she didn't want anyone in the house. And there I was, the guy who kind of, I just met her 2 hours ago, and we're pretty much drunk, and she brought out her good Sheba, and we're smoking away and telling stories. And I said, boy, you know what? You haven't been out of this house, have you? And she goes, no, I don't know. I'm, whatever that disease is that you can't get out of the house. And so anyway, so she's, can't get out of the house. But I'm now like someone she feels totally comfortable with and totally great with. And so we've eaten almost a meal already, right? But not, that's like in Europe. This is just the first 3 courses. So anyway, And we got a pretty good buzz on. I said, "What kind of car do you got?" She goes, "I got a nice little, um, whatever." It was a convertible. I'm not quite sure what it was. It was an American car, but it was convertible. And it was in good shape. It was relatively. Her daddy would never, so she never had to worry about paying a bill. And so anyway, I said, "So where is it?" "Oh, it's parked over there." I go, "That's a nice car. We should take a ride." She goes, "I can't." "Oh, come on. You don't let people in the house. Here I am in the house with you. We're like more than buds. I'm massaging your feet." "Oh, don't stop." "Yes." Right. Then I go up her legs. "Oh, don't stop." And I go up to her knees. "Oh, don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop." I said, "You want me not to stop? We're going to go in that car and we're going to take a ride up to the Blue Ridge Parkway." Right. And she goes, "Don't stop, don't stop, don't." And so, she gets to that point, and I said, "So that was pretty good, wasn't it?" "Yeah, I haven't had one of those in I don't know how many years." I said, "And that was just me rubbing your feet. We can go a little more than that." And she goes, "Oh, I don't want you in my bed. That's why we're leaving the house." "And where are we going to go?" I said, "We're going to go up to the Parkway, and we're going to drive towards Waynesville. And between Asheville and Waynesville on the Parkway, there is this really beautiful hotel that has a view like you can't believe. And there's no television, there's no phones, there's just a beautiful room with a beautiful bed and our own jacuzzi and our own shower and a really nice view and a great restaurant. You thought this food was good? Anyway, and I said, you know, the beef and the vegetables were just, they're at this, they're kind of cooking, and I had it in. She had a really nice Dutch oven, so one of those pots, right? So I'm just turning off the heat and leaving it on the stove. Let's go. If you want more of that feet thing, let's go. Let's take some of your boo and I couldn't be driving around with marijuana in my. No. I'll hold it, right? Don't worry about it. And we're going to take a couple of these bottles of champagne that have been cooling in the fridge. I'm going to put them in paper bags so they stay cold. I'm going to take a few, some of that salmon and some of this bread and some of this cheese and, the brownies and the ice cream. I'll put the ice cream with the cold champagne bottles. It'll be fine. And you're going to, have you ever been up? I've never been on the Blue Ridge Parkway. I said, well, you're going to have a treat, baby. So I take her up there, and she is having the best of time. And I'm driving. She's scared to drive her own car. So I'm driving the car. And we're driving, and there's nobody up there, right? So we're zipping along, and I know all the places to stop to see the real view. And every time we find a real beautiful spot, bucolic, the waterfall in the back and the view of the mountains, I stop in the parking lot and, get out. I had two, no, that was later on. I just turned her around in the car seat and massaged her feet and went, and we just kept doing that along the Blue Ridge Parkway until we got to the hotel, and there was no one there really. I knew the guy at the desk, and I said, "Hey, how about room 7? And he says, "Always waiting for you, Al." And so we went in there, and it was like at the end, and it was like all by itself, and it was a suite. It had everything you'd ever want, your own balcony. It was amazing, and air conditioning and a fireplace, so you could have a cool or warm, whatever, right? So and if it was summertime, you could still have a fire, just turn on the air conditioning. That's why they had the air conditioning, really, because you really didn't need it up in those mountains. So anyway, we have a wonderful 2 nights and 1 day, because we don't go back to her house. We hike around up in those mountains, and she got the car, so I can drive all up and down the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I take her to Mount Mitchell, and I take her to Micaville and Little Switzerland, and to Boone, and to Lenore, and all of those places along the Blue Ridge Parkway, not on any of the county roads. So, and there's nobody up there, right? And so we're having a grand old time. And so that's it. We get back, and she goes, "You need to move into my place." I said, "Well, honey," and that's what I call her, honey, right? like the movie Honey West, right? The TV show. She was blonde, but all the other hair was black. And so anyway, and she had wild eyebrows, and she was a curvy girl, and she was in her 30s, early 30s. I was a little bit older than she was, like by 2 or 3 years, 4 years at most. Anyway, so by the time we get back, she calls up this person, she works with as a shrink, and says, "I'm cured. I can get out. Start getting me customers. I'll come down to the office and work." And so she does. Right? She does a great job. She's doing a great job, and she loves the fact that I'm an artist. I'm involved in all these things, and all these events, and like we have the Orange Peel. I go in there one day. I break into the place and say, "Well, this is a great club." I find out who owns it. The lady lives right in town. Her husband had this big empire of car parts, and he had loads of money. He did that in the 20s and 30s before Asheville crashed, and as a young woman, that was her memories of the best time when her husband had that nightclub. Right. So anyway, I say to her, I want to use the Orange Peel. You still own it. It's still in your corporate name. All I want you to do is pay the insurance so you're covered. And I'll make sure nothing bad happens ever. And I will fix those up. So if you do want, when the big rush comes, you want to make some money, you can sell that place. And I'll put it in good shape. Right? I just want to use it, and I'll do it. I'm going to bring in the music you love, the blues, all, because Asheville had tons of black, amazing musicians. And that was a black musical club for white people, and it was like what they had up in Harlem for the white people. Anyway, so white rich people. So we did that, and she loved it. She added like another 10 years to her life. I was like her grandson she never had, and her lawyer actually, you're a smart kid. Why don't we, you have this vision for what Asheville could be, and guys like Vincent Moron and all those other guys, they just and so he's one of the people who helped me put together the artist trust, right? That kind of kept Asheville as the hipster artist place that it is, right? Anyway, so this same time when my shrinky girlfriend was there, right? So she's, I'm involved in all kinds of everything. And I have a friend of mine who has a new age, like Baptist church, and he basically turned this old kind of church gathering space that was like Protestant into like basically the Playboy Mansion grotto. What was his name? He was, it'll pop into my name, not Howard, but something like that. But anyway, so he was quite interesting, and so and Billy Graham was up there. Billy Graham had his place up there near Black Mountain, and I got to know Billy really good because once I stopped doing the things I did the first 3 gigs, the Biltmore House, the City County Plaza, and the Cherokee. By that time I was Mr. Artist Groovy Dude, and I had come to Asheville from Cornell, and my connects at Cornell, I still had them, and that's how I got to Asheville, because my boss in Cornell said, "Al, my buddy, who's a demographer / developer / corporate guy / government guy, has told me that his newest project is Asheville and bringing it back to life." And he said, "Boy, do I have a guy for you." And that was me. So that's how I got to Asheville. So anyway, I still had my connects. And so I called up my old boss and I said, "Listen, I know you don't need me anymore, but I miss you." But he says, there's got to be other guys in other universities and other institutions that needs a guy like me to go look at their project. He goes, "Actually, I do. And actually, I'm going to be your pimp," because I have a lot of friends who keep saying, "Whatever happened to Al? I could really use it." And so the first gig I did, I worked for a company that did traffic lights and security systems and everything of that nature. That's now like the NSA. It's like, and this guy was kind of interesting, and he was a guy who did come from that world, and the 50s, 60s, and and then he started working for another company in the 70s, and then he was the smartest dog. So he, as those people ran that business into the ground, he kind of bought it for nothing and turned it into his business. And so the guys who put TV cameras on street lights, on red, yellow, green lights, traffic lights, was this company. And he had a computer. So, they would put sensors in the road. But if you were in any place that had, snow and people threw salt on it, it would eat those sensors up. You'd have to rip up the road every 3 or 4 years to put new sensors in. Anyway, so he developed a computer and a software that the TV camera was the eyes of the computer and counted the cars, right? And then just started seeing the patterns of this many cars turn left and this many cars do this and this, And so he had a system that he could put into a city where it would maximize the flow and safety of the traffic. So, man, this guy was in high cotton. And so he sent me as the demographer to go pen out what the traffic flow was, where you put the little hoses on the road and it counts the cars and that kind of stuff. And I would do that. And I would also, because I'd be more than that, looking at everything going on in that city, town, county, whatever it was, where it was going to go, where in the next 10 years the traffic flow would be, because he wanted to be able to initiate a system for what the municipality said, hey, is what we need. And he would build a system that could be built upon to be what I was looking at and saying, this is what it's going to be, right? And so we were a great team, and he kept doing that. And then he took that same technology and started plugging into other things like supermarkets and Walmarts and things like that, like picking out the people who were going to, keep an eye on this guy. Because that machine, because it was looking at not whether you were white, black, or green, but look at patterns. And we could set patterns into it in a supermarket or a Walmart's or a store like that would see the pattern of how people would walk through the grid of the store. And if they went around this and then went to something and got the tomato sauce, and it could see all of that because it knew exactly what every product was in the store. So if you picked up, some vegetables and then went over and got tomato sauce and then got some pasta, you're obviously Mr. Joe, supermarket guy, but if you're like scoping out the really expensive stuff and that's all you're doing, that's somebody you keep an eye on, right? So anyway, we were doing that. And so that was really interesting. And so I didn't work for those guys. And what was the best about that job, my skill set was so specific. I wasn't employed. I said, listen, I'm not going to be your employee. I'm not going to move to Ohio where the main office is. I'm going to stay in Asheville. I'm a consultant. So you're going to pay me pretty good for that 13 days that I'm going to be on whatever project you want me on. But then you don't have to pay me or my medical or any of that kind of stuff. My 401, you don't have to do any of that. And the guy said, that's a great idea. So that's what I did. So I would at least once to 4 times a month fly out of Asheville on these gigs. And I had all different kinds. I worked for all different kinds of entities. And my old boss at Cornell, he was a great pimp. He plugged because he knew me. I worked for him for 3 years. He knew that I really was great at not this singular one thing, but lots of different things, right? So I worked really well with people, even though I don't care about it. I don't have any agenda. I don't have any ideology. I don't care. I care about the individual, how they feel. That's why I'm pretty good with women, because I don't care about me. I care about how I listen to them. I give them, let me rub your feet. Anyway, so that was my little life in Asheville for a good 9 years. And, the 4th year is when I met this girl. And so we're having a great old time. And so I'm involved in so Billy Graham, I take her up to meet Billy, and Billy and I are buds, and Billy has a great party, and the folk over, the esoteric people over in Black Mountain, take her to them. I'm part of those guys. And there's some other interest because that place was so old money, and so there were a lot. I lived in the Masonic Lodge downtown. I rented it. It was 8,000 square foot building, and I rented it for $50. I mean, that's how down Asheville was back in the 90s. Anyway, so we're having a great old time, and she is like flourishing at her career. And her father comes and visits her, and they have a great old time. I meet him. He stays at the fancy, what's it called? It's called it's been bought out by a corporation, so it has like a corporate name now, but it used to be these German guys owned a bunch of them up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Anyway, so like that hotel that I took her to was part of that German guy thing, the Nazis. And they were Nazis, they big time Nazis. Like World War II, when we started having captured German soldiers, they put them, the higher guys, the captain, the majors and above, they sent to Asheville to stay in that hotel, and they could walk around. So that's how Nazi that town. That town was down with those guys walking around. So anyway, so she's really getting into all this stuff, and she gets into this New Age church, right? Oh, what was the guy's name? Howard, not Zen, Howard something. But like I said, it was like the Playboy, Chicago grotto. So anyway, so she's going to that church, and then she meets some people who are into this woman named Ganga G, and she is kind of putting herself up as the white girl Mayor Baba, right? And so I didn't care. I mean, I knew all these great Indian guys who came to America to bring enlightenment to us from India. I had a girlfriend at that time. I was 16. She was 78. We were the original Harold and Maude, and so I was down, and as part of the real esoteric scene in New York in the 70s and 80s. Anyway, so she getting with these girls, and they would come to her house, and they'd have these meetings, and it was like a book club almost. And Gangaji would send them, VHS videos of the last thing. And so she became the center core of this religious enlightenment of Gangaji, right? And so, and she keeps saying, "Oh, you need to come to Asheville. It's so spiritual. You'll love it. It's blah, 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 blah." And so Gangaji says, yeah, we'd love, I'm like from the mountains, so yeah, I'd love to come visit Asheville. And he says, and let's make it for a couple months from now. Let's your people talk to my people, and I'll show up. And so that they get it. So my girlfriend says, "Well, we have to have a big space. Can you talk to your friend Howard, and can we use his church?" And I go to Howard. I said, "Listen, Howard, this place you haven't washed a window or swept the floor, in the last 10 years that you've been in this building. Haven't painted it ever. You kept the same pea green crap, vomit color on your, no." These girls will come in and redecorate this place like a $100,000 job. They're going to clean every square inch of this place because this is their God, and they can't have their God come into this place. And Howard goes, "Yeah, that's a great deal. I'm going to take a vacation. Yeah, you can redo this place. And by the way, I got some electric problems over here." And said, "Okay, don't worry, Howard." And so that's what happens, right? The girls come in and just take the place apart and paint every square inch of it and turn it into just the most beautiful. They clean the windows, and who knew sun came through the windows? So the day comes when Gangaji lands at the airport, and the girls get limousines to pick up everyone, and they wanted them to stay a few days, and these people said, "Oh no, we're just flying through. We're coming from New England, and we're going to land in your airport. You pick us up. I'll have 4 hours with you guys, and then I have to go back to the airport, and we're going to go on to Colorado." And that's as good as it gets. So they said, "Oh well, okay." So anyway, everyone is wait. They go get her in the limousines. They bring her. They have the green room. That's all, and it's got all these beautiful flowers and fruit and food and special water and all the rest. And so Gangaji comes out. Her guys come out and talk about the Gangaji Institute and blah blah blah, and enlightenment, blah blah blah. And I'm kind of I'm not. Everyone's sitting on pillows, right? And I'm in the back, just kind of leaning on the door, and just so if I want to, I can get out quick, right? Not embarrass my girlfriend. Anyway, so you know, my girlfriend comes out in a diaphanous robe, along with her girls, and they come out. And Gangaji sits in this chair like the king chair, big, gigantic chair they got, and it's got more pillows than anything else. And Gangaji's kind of floating on this big chair, and I'm like way in the back, right? And my girlfriend gives a greeting and da-da-da, and how great Ganji is, and the religious enlightened that they've all gotten, and how they've lost all of their. And she goes, and I used to have real problems with agoraphobia and this. Now, no, not, we met about 6 months before she stumbled into Gangaji land. And no, what got her out of the house was really good food and getting her feet rubbed to the point of, and then we went further, right? That's what kind of got her out of that. And, anyway, so I'm in the back of the house, leaning against the door and ready to scoot out of there. And Gangaji, and my girlfriend, my cousin, and Gangaji gets out of the chair and walks up to the dais, and she looks out over all the audience, and she's so smiley, and she's so beaming with Gangaji-ness. And then her eyes zoom in on me. And I'm like, this woman is like staring me down. And she goes, "Ow!" Me. "Ow!" And I kind of look at her. I kind of walk amongst the people, like the front thing. I just kind of like walk up, and she's going, "Ow!" And she's pointing at me. And everyone's saying, we have to kill Al. And she goes, "Ow!" And I go, "Tammy? Is that you, Tammy?" "Yes. Where have you been, Al? I need a foot rub." And I go, Tammy, oh, you're Gangaji?" Tammy was a roadhouse dog waitress in West Virginia, off of 66, right? And I used to have a girlfriend who was a DJ in Morgantown, West Virginia. And I would stop at that truck stop because it was 20% into West Virginia. I had just, I'd already done 80% of my drive. I had that last hour. And at that time, I would go and have a meal and talk to Tammy, because she was the slinkiest girl waitress there. And that was Tammy. And that was Gangaji. And she goes, and she starts to walk towards me, and right there. And I said, "Tammy, what happened?" She goes, "What happened to you? You kept coming to see," what was her name? "Maryland," on the radio. And then she went off the air, and then, she left town, and I had no other reason to come. She goes, "I thought we kind of, that time you rubbed my feet was like I've never had." I said, and so I said, "So your feet hurt now?" She goes, "Yes, let's go in the green room." So we do. We leave all those people, 600 people who are, Gangaji. And my girlfriend, number one Gangaji girl, that was the end of my relationship with her. No matter how much I rubbed that Jewish girl's feet, didn't make up for that. Now, is that a good place to stop? Let's see. Uh, Agoraphobia. Yep. So how'd you like that story? There's two of you. That story's worth at least 5 thumbs up. Let's have 12 thumbs up. I know most of you guys are going to watch this after I bring it back up, like after tomorrow, but how much juice do I have left in this thing? I don't know how to look at that. So anyway, what time is it? Boop, 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 boop. 2:30 or 2:16. Yes, I've been talking for an hour and a half. There's only one of you left. So, how'd you like that story? Did you like that story? Figs, yeah, that's it. Figs. Thank you. Figs is the word. I was looking for figs. Yep. Yes, Jamie, you are the best. You always fill in the you and that other girl. What's her name? She's always good at filling in the things I forget. So, Jamie, have you ever cooked with fig leaves? They're not just good for covering your private parts. They're really good as a seasoning. Anyway. Doo-dah. Cool story. Okay, I'm glad you liked it. Indeed. So anyway, that's what life's about, kids. Don't believe a word I say, but that is a true story, right? So that's what life's about. And that's what God, I hate using the word God because it's so parochial. That's what Love's Co-Creation wants us to do, because that's the only way Love's Co-Creation can experience that. That's what we're here. We're here to be the mirror for Love's Co-Creation. So Love's Co-Creation can understand what it's about. Stay well. Okay, Jay. But one last thing, if you haven't left already. What I just said, Love's Co-Creation is the creator of all things. We are Love's Co-Creation's reflection. So Love's Co-Creation can have an idea of what it's doing because it's a work in progress. And it can only experience. That's why we have war and suffering, and because it's just to Love's Co-Creation. It's not good or bad. It's just another experience to broaden its understanding of existence, of consciousness. Is that close? Isn't that a kind of Mayor Baba kind of perception of what it's about? It's still there, I think. Anyway, anybody there? Anyone have a comment on that? Right? The illusion that sustains reality, Mayor Baba. Yep. Thank you. Okay. See, Jamie's so good. I kind of dribble on about things, and Jamie kind of puts it in 4 or 5 words and is clear as a bell. Me, I tell a story that you kind of go, And again, don't believe a word I say. So here it is about almost 2 o'clock or a little past 2 o'clock, somewhere in there. And so I'll probably come back depending on how much juice is left on this device. I might do something at 4. Because right now it's hot. If I drive the mile back to the deep green, it's too hot outside to do anything. I have to wait till about 5 where the sun goes back down, and I got a good 3 hours. But I got to do it pretty quick because that's when the no-see-ums and mosquitoes come out and eat you alive. So anyway, that's life here. And there's nobody watching anymore. And I love you all. And so look for me a little later this afternoon.